Hello everyone, this is going to be part 3 of my response to the video Spirit Science 1 Thoughts. Yeah, it's going to be the same format as last time. This is going to be a response to minutes 5 and 6. I had to rewrite it a few times. I'm hoping I've removed all the parts where I'm just repeating myself. Because it's technically not a new video, I've got to remember that. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, everything I say might not make sense, though I have made an attempt to make it so you technically wouldn't have to have seen parts 1 and 2. But you probably should go back and watch parts 1 and 2. But anyway, let's just get started.
In this scenario, don't think of thoughts as separate, but as a whole that everyone is latching onto. Of course, because we can't physically see this realm of thoughts, we can't tell exactly what the original idea was, only the interpretation that they describe using functions like speech and body language, as well as our own intuition, which is how thoughts connect to each other. Because of this, we add a bit of our own creation to the mix, our own spice, while still working towards the same common goal. A social gathering is another good example of this at work too. People gathering together because they share the same ideas, thoughts, and emotions as the rest of the people there. An example could be a college course on architecture. People interested in architecture would attend the course because they share the same interest mentally. This shouldn't be anything mind-blowing. It's our day-to-day lives, just from a different perspective. Even if you're using something that someone else made, you're still creating this experience for yourself. You manifested that iPad or house or whatever into your experiences. So with thoughts connecting with other thoughts comes our first big realization. This new understanding of how intertwined we truly are. We're not only connected in the physical realm, but in a mental and spiritual way as well.
So we start with people holding on to the same idea, yet still needing to communicate what that idea is. I have mentioned before my irritation at this person's total lack of explanation about what he is proposing. For a video that is meant to be a science lesson, it seems to lack everything that is generally in a science lesson. Clear defining of terms, explanation as to how discoveries were made, testing, clear explanation as to how and why proposed ideas function as they do, predicted results if something is true. It all seems to be lacking here. I can sum up this video by saying, a thought realm exists because it does. So Spirit Science says we can't tell what the original thought was. I don't see why, as we can just latch onto the original thought with our minds in the thought realm. Why this reliance on communication where minds can literally grab onto other people's thoughts from the very air? I find it interesting we can have no idea what the original thought of another was, but we can still somehow be sure it is different from that in which is being communicated to us. We don't know what the original thought was, we just know it is different from what we are being told. How fascinating. Let us just quickly talk about language. Have you ever wondered why we have it and why it grows so rapidly? There are at least 1 million English words, and how many languages are there? We developed language over time because we needed an efficient way to communicate our thoughts. As our ideas grew more complex, we needed more nuanced language to express these thoughts and ideas. I would suggest the reason for this development is due to the lack of thought communication. Just throwing it out there that language probably wouldn't have evolved as it did if we could grab each other's thoughts from the air. Now I want you to think of all the times where language fails and a thought realm, if it existed, would be readily apparent and beneficial. Consider two men who know nothing of each other's language. If a thought realm exists, each could communicate roughly by thinking of different objects, communicating in images of existent objects, if you like. Sadly, this doesn't happen. The two men seek commonalities between people, gestures for eating, drinking, or pointing at what one desires to be drawn to attention. You know, non-verbal language. How many times have you had to explain a concept of something to another person and they just simply don't get it? Perhaps you can't explain it well enough. You're thinking of the Eiffel Tower and you just can't think of the name of it, and it's a very hard thing for you to describe. Regardless of how hard you try, they simply can't picture what you're talking about. Why would this ever happen? The other person should simply latch onto the thought and gain an image of what you're trying to communicate with words. There should never be a communication that ends with, I just don't know what you're talking about. I simply can't picture it. For their mind can literally grab your thought from the air. But sadly, we have many conversations that end with just that phrasing. I have no idea what you're talking about. Why would this ever happen if thoughts could connect to each other in a thought realm? There are other examples, but I'm just trying to stress, if this thought realm existed, we would see evidence of it daily. Our lives would be different. Communication itself would be different. If thoughts were always externalized, well, this person didn't say how often we connected to each other's thoughts, or if it always happened, or if we needed to be thinking close to the same thing for a connection to be possible, or that thoughts, similar merge, but others don't, well, this isn't explained very well. I am making many assumptions because this person has told us nothing about the thought realm except that it exists. That's it. That's all that is explained in this whole entire video. I brought up that I didn't like that certain terms weren't defined well in this video. I'll give you an example of intuition. He's said intuition is that in which gives us bad vibes, but he also says that intuition is that in which connects our thoughts. What is intuition to this person? Originally, he had an image of thoughts being held by clouds. Is that a representation of intuition? The clouds? What is intuition made up of that it is able to hold thoughts? How many thoughts can intuition hold, and at what range? Does intuition hold our brains and our thoughts together? At what stage does intuition take the thoughts from our brains? How does it do this? How does it know when to do this? Does intuition just link our thoughts, or does it link multiple thoughts together? Can I think of two things and intuition will link them both together? Can intuition stay linked to our thoughts after a person has left? Like a person leaves with their thought, can I keep that thought for myself with my intuition? How did you find out that intuition holds thoughts together? Basically, for a lesson, there is oh so little content. Ideas develop and evolve between people not because of some poor communication of external hive minds of thoughts, but because we take in new information via our senses and our brains process it in relation to our experiences and understanding. We are all unique in that no two people have lived identical lives, thus not everyone has the same experiences and understandings. So many people can have many different opinions on new information, as we can't just gift our thoughts to other people or have other people latch onto them. We discuss them with a language. We constantly take in and express new information. It's going in and out all the time. Learning through this process. I suppose what I'm talking about is kind of related to a sociological theory of social constructivism, but that is sort of irrelevant to what I'm talking about. But if you're curious, it does kind of talk about how we learn in society. Keep in mind, currently there are two ideas on the table as to where our thoughts reside. There is the brain, with 86 billion neurons, trillions of connections between them, that houses the memory, and one can damage to destroy one's memory and capacity for thought. And the other is outside the brain, somewhere. If the images are anything to go off, thoughts exist in clouds of intuition. The references he gives to social gatherings and university courses seems a little out of place. People take courses for many, many different reasons, and people gather for even more numerous reasons. I'm not sure how this relates to thought realms anymore. I was under the impression the thought realm connected people when people were close together. Is the thought realm connecting people across long distances in order to draw them into the same social setting? Am I the only person who thinks that a better explanation for social gatherings and university courses is the psychological needs of humanity for companionship, learning, and development? In a social gathering, you can find endless people with different thoughts, views, and opinions. I don't know if people have ever been to a university, but many people do take courses they have no interest in, or take a course because it will lead to something they want to study later. It is not clear everyone is drawn to a university course because everyone in that classroom has the same emotions and goals. I have met many people in my studies that have complete different goals and emotions than I do, and different reasons for their study. There is a line from this video that I want to speak about. This shouldn't be anything mind-blowing. This is just our everyday lives, but from a different perspective. I'm just going to use this quote in a different context to show you how I view this statement given what he has said prior to it. Have you ever noticed how sometimes a match won't light? Perhaps when you're trying to light birthday candles? You see, when you have a thought to strike a match, your brain sends a signal to the fire god Orisha. Avisha is not only the god of fire, but she also has a bit of a sense of humor. She likes to have her fun. She at times holds off her gift of fire to see your frustration. At times she gives you the gift, but makes the fire run so fast down the match you don't have time to light your candles. At times she won't let your candles light at all. Avisha sure likes to have her fun, which is why we sometimes have matches that just simply won't light, and sometimes have great difficulty with them. This shouldn't be anything mind-blowing. This is just our everyday lives, but from a different perspective. What I'm trying to express in this example is, what spirit science is doing is exactly what primitives of many cultures did in human history. It is possible to take existent phenomena and write a narrative that explains that in which is observed. It is why there have been endless types of gods and spiritual teachings, all differing in many contradictory ways except that they all seek to explain things. Science graduated from this narrative writing by testing its explanations, which is why science has been humanity's greatest triumph as far as getting correct information and developing the species. So apparently everything we've heard up to this point proves there is a thought realm and that we are all spiritually connected. I disagree strongly with the first point, and I'm not even sure the second follows from the first point. Even if I granted absolutely everything mentioned in this video, which is, I feel like granting a person that reality itself is made of cotton candy, how does this get a person to a spiritual connection? Thus far, this video has been arguing for a brain function that enables externalized brain processing and sharing of thought through this process. What about this requires a spirit? Let us speak hypothetically and assume that everything discovered about the brain in all of human history is just flat out wrong, which is what one has to believe for one to consider everything in this video to be factual. The brain externalizing thought and processing it externally would not be spiritual. It would be a physical function of the brain. I don't know how you can get around this to assert that it is a spiritual function.
Up until recently, humankind has always understood simply that they were connected only through their physical being. We assumed that the conscious experience, as well as all of the thinking, was totally 100% isolated from the rest of everyone else. The fact is, we're not. We are so connected with each other, it's almost impossible to believe. Think about almost every creature on Earth. What do we really know about the bond that connects them? Geese are able to travel long distances, switching who flies in front like clockwork. Many fish swim in large schools, and we know that they don't have a form of verbal communication. Our pets are able to communicate with each other without speaking. Yet, it's like they know what each other are feeling and connect in a very amazing personal way. Almost every observable creature on Earth has this connection with at least their own species, if not others. We as humans are the next step in life, but that doesn't mean we don't have this connection. What's to say we're not also connected to each other in this way? We've been out of touch with ourselves for an incredibly long time now, and we are growing increasingly disharmonic.
I feel I need to stress again, spiritualism is very, very old. In ages past, we had no means to determine underlying variables or causes that influence phenomena, which is why every second place had its own ideas as to how the world worked. The idea that correlation does not necessarily mean causation was not a known principle, so you had gurus, shamans, mystics doing everything under the sun that they believed could affect an outcome, from human sacrifice to dancing. Many different realms, spirits, and gods were posited as explanations. It was only when we started to move away from these ideas that we actually got anywhere. We actually learnt things and discovered how to get continued predicted results. People for thousands of years had their spirits, their miracle cures, their connections to the land, and they died in droves to any change in climate or common cold that swept by. Magic was believed in, of all types, which shouldn't surprise anyone. It is not like there was good education systems around. There are underlying psychological needs that each person has that can lead a person into believing in something that is not evidence supported. Humanity wants security and to feel like they understand things, which is why every second place had its own gods protecting them, or spirits protecting them or teaching them about the world. Australian Aboriginals, for instance, have had spirituality for tens of thousands of years. Here's some quotes. Our spirituality is a oneness and an interconnectedness with all that lives and breathes, even with all that does not live and breathe. Aboriginal spirituality is the belief that all objects are living and share the same soul or spirit that of Aboriginals share. Spirituality is literally the stuff of ages past. Spirituality is gaining a resurgence today due to people losing faith in religion and seeing spiritualism as something they can turn to that requires little effort and makes them feel special or superior. Spirituality is new, fresh, magical, interesting, where hundreds of years of mundane scientific research is old and boring and takes a very long time to learn. Spiritual connectedness on a non-spatial thought realm is far from a widely held belief or even an evidence-supported one. To call it a fact is to butcher the word beyond meaning. We don't assume thoughts are isolated in our brains. The entire body of evidence from testing and observation suggests that conclusion. How much do we really know about animals? Well, we have been interacting and observing animals for thousands of years, and we have fields of science dedicated to the understanding and study of animals. So, we know quite a bit, actually. So, to the age-old question. How do geese know when to change formation? So the V formation, as most people know, greatly boosts the efficiency and range of flying birds, particularly over long migratory routes. The goose in front obviously has the hardest job, so how do the geese know when to switch him out? The goose in front thinks, I'm getting sort of tired, and moves to the back. The other two geese see him leave, and whichever one is closest to the front or simply outdistances the other, moves into the front, and the other sits at pace behind him. Quite simple, isn't it? Requires no telepathic communication between some thought realm of some sort. Just requires a goose to realize that he needs a breather, and two geese to recognize when the tail in front of them has moved to the back. Not complicated. As we move on to fish, I need to say it is mind-boggling how little a person can be aware of non-verbal communication. A fish can communicate visually with such things as body movement, posture, color, and color patterns. Sound is also used for communication. Sounds are produced by grinding teeth, flexing, contracting muscles, or vibrating the swim bladder. Fish also communicate by releasing chemicals known as pheromones. These are chemical signals produced by animals that, when released, influence the behavior of others of the same species. The sense of smell is important for this form of communication. We know these things because there are people who dedicate their lives to the study of animals and they test things. The reason all animals within a species, well, most animals within their species, are connected is because they communicate. They learn signals and signs from experience. Parents teaching their young is not just a human thing, you know. Some animals do it as well. Animals communicate and live in a variety of different ways. Not knowing about them is not an excuse to scream telepathy. I dislike when people speak of humanity as the next step in life, as if nature had a purpose and it built upon itself for billions of years specifically to get to us. We are not exactly the masters of every aspect of physiology. We have one thing we are best at in the animal kingdom, and that is intelligence. It just happens to be a survival advantage with the most utility. I hear this said sometimes. Humanity is out of touch with itself. No one ever expands on its meaning, yet people repeat it over and over. What are we out of touch with? How humans lived in the past? Oh, those good old days. Gone are the days where humanity was at threat by animals. Gone are the days where a changing climate could kill off our species. Gone are the days where we knew nothing of this world or how it worked. Gone are the days where 50% of humanity didn't make it to adulthood, and humanity lived very short lives. When were we in touch with ourselves? During our days where we knew nothing of ourselves? The functions of our body or how the world works? The days of our total ignorance of reality? Where we knew nothing of germs or why the earth shook beneath our feet? Should we destroy civilization, purge our great libraries to get back to this wondrous time? Scourge the developments of our species for the days of peril and fear of the savannah? When were we in touch with ourselves? And what the fuck does that mean? There has always been battle, there has always been fighting, there has always been some sort of struggle on this planet. This is not something new. It wasn't 3,000 years ago we all lived in some magical paradise of happiness. I can only assume he is complaining about modern advancements, and that's why we're out of touch with ourselves, because of all the horrible, horrible technology that we have these days that has given us longer lives and security. He sits there using the most modern animation technology to transfer data throughout the world, and then complains about it. He makes a living through this technology and then complains about it. That is a tad hypocritical. I love throwing this video I'm about to show somewhere around just because it's very visually appealing and it's short and sweet and to the point. Here's a video of 200 countries in the last 200 years, showing how humanity has grown in terms of health and wealth. You can see as humanity, all of humanity has slowly gotten better. Humanity as it is remarkable. We strive on despite our challenges. We are connected through our desires for life, society, health and happiness. We are not connected through some thought realm. We are connected by our physical interactions with each other. We share the sad times, we share the happy times. We help each other, we laugh with each other. We do not need some fanciful thought realm to connect us. We are already connected. We all exist as part of a system that has led humanity towards greater understanding and development. It is because of us all working together that humanity has grown into what it is now. It is remarkable. The spiritual are simply too blind with their search for meaning to realize the meaning that already exists physically and demonstrably within the inner workings of humanity. The spiritual are those digging in the barren dirt to find food, not noticing that they are enjoying the shade of a fruiting apple tree. So that's it. That took quite a while to edit and shoot. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I came off more passionate than I was in my previous video, and that I didn't beat around the bush as much as I did in the previous video. Or the previous parts, rather. That link... The video that I showed of the graph of humanity's development as far as wealth and health is concerned over the last 200 years, that will be in the description box below. So thanks for watching. I hope you've all had a good holidays. You're gonna have a happy New Year, I guess. That's something I can say. Yeah, have a good one. I hope you all stick around for the next part.
On a horse.
Everything I say might not make sense, though I have made an attempt to make it so you technically wouldn't have to have seen parts 1 and 2. But you probably should go back and watch parts 1 and 2. But anyway, let's just get started.
In this scenario, don't think of thoughts as separate, but as a whole that everyone is latching onto. Of course, because we can't physically see this realm of thoughts, we can't tell exactly what the original idea was, only the interpretation that they describe using functions like speech and body language, as well as our own intuition, which is how thoughts connect to each other. Because of this, we add a bit of our own creation to the mix, our own spice, while still working towards the same common goal. A social gathering is another good example of this at work too. People gathering together because they share the same ideas, thoughts, and emotions as the rest of the people there. An example could be a college course on architecture. People interested in architecture would attend the course because they share the same interest mentally.
Communicate what that idea is. I have mentioned before my irritation at this person's total lack of explanation about what he is proposing. For a video that is meant to be a science lesson, it seems to lack everything that is generally in a science lesson. Clear defining of terms, explanation as to how discoveries were made, testing, clear explanation as to how and why proposed ideas function as they do, predicted results if something is true. Hello everyone, this is going to be part 3 of my response to the video Spirit Science 1 Thoughts. Yeah, it's going to be the same format as last time. This is going to be a response to minutes 5 and 6. I had to rewrite it a few times. I'm hoping I've removed all the parts where I'm just repeating myself. Because it's technically not a new video, I've got to remember that. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2...
This shouldn't be anything mind-blowing, it's our day-to-day lives, just from a different perspective. Even if you're using something that someone else made, you're still creating this experience for yourself. You manifested that iPad or house or whatever into your experiences. So with thoughts connecting with other thoughts comes our first big realization. This new understanding of how intertwined we truly are. We're not only connected in the physical realm, but in a mental and spiritual way as well.
So we start with people holding on to the same idea, yet still needing to